Painting an even background wash is not nearly as scary as these skies may look. Let's get started. Hi everybody, Kat here. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought we would work on doing an even background wash. Now sometimes these can be challenging. So I have chosen my Dollarama paper, which is not cotton, and I've chosen my B paper, that's 100% cotton. And I want to show you how they behave differently, and if in fact they do behave much differently when you're trying to do an even wash. So I chose a few photos that I thought might be fun to go by, and I will credit those people in the comments below. I will in the description, excuse me. I will credit those people. They're one of them is from Unsplash and the other one's kind of out of my head. Okay, so let's get started. The first one here is the cotton paper, and I'll just write that here. Oh, that's not showing up too well, is it? I can see it. Okay. So the first one here, I'd like to do kind of a reddish orange sky just for fun. So I'm going to get a nice juicy mixture here of the red and the orange that I want. This is the red I want. I'm using cadmium orange and vermilion red. And you have to have enough of your paint in your palette so that you don't have to try to remix the color and match it. You have to try to get it all done at the same time. Get the color you're aiming for, and then you have to add enough water because there's a little trick to this. So I have my paper elevated by the width of a roll of tape. It's about 3/4 of an inch to an inch up high. And if it's easier for you, you could just lift your board. I have cut my paper down. It's about, I'd say, 4 by 4, let's say, and this one's about 6 by 3.5. So the first thing you're going to do is put the line up at the top here, and you're going to make sure that the paint has left a big puddle just in this line. There's a big bead of paint here, and if there's not, you're going to add to it to make sure there is. Okay, so then you're going to take your brush and you're going to take that bead and you're going to drag it down to this next level. And make sure that there's a bead along here. And if you need to add to it, just get some more paint on your brush and drop it in. And you see there's a nice bead there. So you have to work fairly quickly. And whoopsie, you just touch the bead and it'll fall down. Okay. So I'm going to add a teeny bit more over to this side. And I'm going to come from here and I'm going to do it again. Okay. Right, once again, we're going to get a nice bead here of paint. I hope you can see that okay. You see the bead here? It's like watery, very watery. But there's enough pigment in here that I won't have to do a second layer, because if you don't put enough paint in your watery wash, try to say that 3 times, you will it'll really fade out, because watercolor always dries lighter. Okay. I suppose that it dries lighter because the water evaporates, and then all you're left with is pigment, but you've mixed the pigment so much with water, depending how much you use. I suppose that's why it fades. So the better the pigments you use, I guess the better your painting turns out. Now, do you see how lovely and even this wash is? There's no streaks whatsoever. This is the 100% cotton paper. Adding and making sure my bead's there. And don't go in with a thirsty brush. Make sure your brush is full of paint. Even if you think there's too much, it won't be a problem till you get to the bottom, and then I'll show you what to do with that. Okay, so there's a nice bead again. I'm gonna check my, yeah, you can see that, okay. Sorry, I had a camera malfunction the last video, and I don't know why it happened. I have no clue what happened. It just stopped recording. Some kind of glitch. Okay, so then this is the last one, I think. Maybe one more? No, I think I could get away with this. So we're going to keep this tilted. And you'll see in a minute or so that this is going to collect a heavy bead. And if we don't remove that bead, what's going to happen is it's going to, when there's more water in one area, it pushes back into the area that has less water. So that creates a cauliflower or a bloom. So what I would do with the same brush, or unless you have another damp brush near you, you dry it out, you make it nice and thirsty, you wet it in clean water. Hi everybody. So once again, there is a camera glitch, but went to the manufacturer, it's all settled, it will never happen again. So let's carry on. What you missed was this side. So I'm just going to briefly show you. There was a little trick at the end of this one that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to show you on this paper here. This is the Dollarama paper. I have a separate little bit of paint in this palette just so I could show you. So you want the bead, and then you want to bring that bead down, coax it down, let it collect down here, and if there's nothing there, then you try again. You add a bit more, and then you coax the bead down, and so on and so forth. I'm just doing this very quickly so I can get to the part that we missed because of my camera issue. Okay, so we're down to the tape, let's say, and you're holding your paper up because you want in order for that bead to develop, you want the paint to be at an angle. You want gravity to work in your favor here. So let's say this is your last row. Okay, you've done it all. This is exactly the way you want. Everything's where you want it. So you're going to rinse your brush and dry it off quite well. Like just dab it until you're sure that it's pretty dry. It's thirsty now, so it wants to drink. So you're going to go along that bead and you're going to suck it up. And you're going to dab that onto paper towel. And if there's more, then you just suck it up again. So back onto our project now. So now we're going to start with this side. This is the cotton side. And what I want to do is create a tree, because it's in the moonlight. This is going to be a quarter moon. The only thing that's going to be in light is the stuff that's closest to the moon, and the stuff that's farthest away, which is, say, closest to the viewer, is going to be in dark shadow. It's going to be like a silhouette. So the first thing I'm going to do is put some water on my quarter moon. I did use a small pencil, and I traced out just like a half a circle almost, just to guide me. Okay, so then I'm going to take my eradicator brush. I use a Wet n Wild makeup brush that I got at a Dollar Tree store. And it works great because the bristles are soft, so it won't damage your paper. And they're short, so there's strength in them. So I'm going to remove some of this. Now because of my camera issue, this is 2 days later. So it's better if you do this, right after you dry your paint the first time. But we're going to make this work for us. Okay, so you add water and you gently, this is cotton paper, so it can take a lot more abuse than this paper. Okay. And if we can't get this to look enough like a yellow moon, we could just add a bit of paper. We can add a little bit of paint. Okay. So let's stop there and see how we carry on with the rest. So I'm going to take a brush with a nice pointed edge, and this one is a size 8. This is very small for a size 8. This company, they're all different, but this is not a typical size 8. So get rid of this. I'm going to go back to the palette I was using. We were using orange. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to take some burnt sienna, which is like a very deep, it's kind of like orange with brown in it. And it's like a rusty color. So down here, I would like to make a tree. And down here, I would like to make some pumpkins. So I'm just going to put some different size pumpkins in here. They do not have to be perfect. This is just a silhouette. Okay. Just a silhouette. Okay, and the tree is going to be here. So I would like the tree to sort of fade off into the grasses here, which we haven't made yet. So we're just going to do some branches. So you just tickle the edge. We don't want them too skinny, because these branches, what we're going to do is fill them with leaves. So here we go. So we're going to just keep building on this tree. Just do some jagged lines. Just touch the paper gently and lightly. And hard angles work well for trees because they're not generally soft looking. And sometimes when you get closer down to the trunk of the tree, which we're going to let come off halfway here, when you get down to the trunk of the tree, everything gets thicker. Okay, so we're just going to fill this in with some burnt sienna. And you'll see what's going to happen next. Okay, a bit more thicker, a little bit thicker. And I'm going to put a few more branches in here. And generally, if you start, wherever you start your brush stroke is going to be a little thicker than where you end it. So you should always work like from the tree, away from the tree. Like start at the tree and work away from the tree. And then here, while this is wet, I'm going to add some dark brown. Choose the darkest brown you have in your set. And some black. I'm just going to add a bit of black in to get that really, really, really dark. I don't want it too watery, because I need quite a bit of it. And we're going to create some shadow on these. So the only thing you can really see on the pumpkins are the edge, because this is supposed to be a silhouette. So now we're going to fill all this in with some nice dark paint. You can do this in layers. You don't have to do it when it's wet. I'm just trying to do this a little bit quickly because this is a tutorial and I do not want you to get bored. So you can see that the edge of this tree is a little brighter than the center, and that's because the moonlight is creating a little tiny bit of there's a little glow on the tree. So these leaves here, I want to put some leaves on this tree, very, very they're kind of not abstract, like intuitive leaves. Your brain will know these are leaves. Anybody that looks at this will know this is a tree and these are leaves. So we're just going to put this color first, because they're the ones that are facing the moonlight. So the moonlight's going to shine on those. Then we're going to add some black to this, just like we did down here. And we're going to add more. Kind of go over them, but don't erase them completely. It's just to highlight the ones that are in the moonlight, in the moonshine. Okay, and this branch would be darker too. Sorry, I am going quite quickly. I'd like some comments to hear if you'd like the videos to be shorter, quicker. I don't get many comments, so I don't know what people would like what people prefer. So it would be really helpful if you could do that. I would really appreciate that. And I appreciate it if you gave me a like if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. So now I'm going in with a tinier brush. I'm going to get some of that burnt sienna, and I'm going to get some black. Okay. Just enough water. It's creamy. It's very creamy, the paint. It's just enough water to get it activated. So we're going to do some grasses. And we're just going to add a hint of shadow here and there. Okay, so we're going to leave this to dry and see how it goes. I think this could use a little bit of a nice brightening up, but for now we're going to leave it. And I'm going to go over to this one. So this one, I had put, if you recall, I put a piece of masking tape here. I just cut a piece of masking tape I had into a round. And it's okay that it wasn't perfect because I'm going to be painting here anyway. So what I'd like to put here is just a silhouette of some pine trees. So let's start with that. So we had purple and black. This is what we used for this one. So let's go back into our purple. And for this, I'm going to use my smaller brush most of the whole time because it's significantly smaller. I'm going to get some black. And we're going to keep this relatively creamy, not too much water. Maybe a bit more purple. Okay. So make sure your brush is dried off at the ferrule, because if there's drops of water while you're trying to paint, it will dilute the paint when you don't want it to. It can get to be quite annoying. So we're gonna start here. You're just gonna put some very thin lines. They do not have to be all the same size. In fact, if they're not, the better. So we're gonna start at the moon. We'll work towards the sides as we go along. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the very tip of the brush and I'm just dabbing willy-nilly back and forth. And try not to make them all look exactly the same because they don't. Nothing looks the same in nature. Everything's, unlike people, that nature's okay with looking different. People, we do whatever we can. We try to look like everybody else and we don't accept our individuality, but trees don't mind. Okay. Now, as you can see, when it's drying, you can see that purple in there, which is what you want because it is right in front of the moon. The ones that are off to the side are going to be darker. So just with the tip of your brush, dab, 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 back and forth like a zigzag, and some of them will come out longer than the others, and that's precisely what you want. Okay. Whoops. Didn't grab enough. Sometimes when you're working with black, it's quite difficult to see if you, anyway, and the older I get, the harder it gets. I don't know if anybody can relate, but there we go. So I think that's enough there. And now I'm going to use just straight black. And I'm going to go into this, do the sides, because they're going to be darker because they're farther away from the moonlight. So I'm going to do my little lines. And same with here. Just graze the paper with the tip of your brush. And you're going to use the tip of your brush to do zigzags. And if you feel like you're going off, just make a new, just the less you fuss, the better it looks sometimes. That's something that I've learned with any kind of art or craft. You can overdo anything. So I just think you should relax and just see how it turns out. Sometimes even people who paint all the time, they have stacks of paintings that they don't like or didn't turn out, or I've painted something that's going pretty well and then I drop my brush and it's totally like irreparable. Like if it's a face, somebody's face, and there's a big black blob on it, I just can't fix it sometimes. So okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to try to cast some shadow, because these trees are in the moonlight, right? And over to the side, there won't be so much light between the trees because they're farther away from the moon's glow. Okay, so we're going to try and cast some shadow. I'm going to soften this out in a minute. And over here, I'm going in with the darkest black. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did on the other side. So I'm using more of the belly of the brush here, and I'm just trying to soften this out. Now, this paper is not 100% cotton, so it starts to dry right away. There's nothing wrong with it. You will get used to working like that. When you switch to cotton, you're going to have to get used to something totally different. So that's the name of the game with watercolor and the paper. So down here would be quite dark too, because it's quite far away from the moon down here. So if this were cotton paper, I would wet it and I would allow it to bleed upward. But since it's not, I'm just softening the edges this way. And I'm dropping in some nice juicy paint. This is like, say, milk, like consistency of milk. Okay, so what you could do up here is take a bigger brush and just dab into your dark purpley black color and make it quite watery, and then dab it off onto a paper towel or a Kleenex, and you're going to try and go sideways, and you're going to try and just come into the moon a little bit like this. And there's a nice Halloween kind of looking October sky. There's one emerging right before our eyes here. I'm just gently wetting the sides because I want to make this moon look a little more round than it looks. It looks a little flat. So there we go. Okay. So now we're going to go back to this guy. And I think now that it's been drying, I don't like this. It's too bland. It's stained the paper. So when you use staining colors, that's exactly what happens. Stains your paper. So I'm going to put some lemon yellow, and my set comes with white. So I'm going to put a bit of white. If you have anything white, any other paint that's white, you could put a drop of it in. It's not really, watercolor white isn't usually very useful, but in this case, I just want to, no, I don't like that whatsoever. So I'm going to take that off and I'm going to get some real white paint. What am I going to use here? Okay, so I have a tube of Van Gogh. It's about Van Gogh paints in Canada are about $4, $6, depending on your color. And so I'm just going to use this. It's called Opaque White. It's still watercolor. So I'm just going to paint this on. I could have used a smaller brush. And then we're going to try to make it glow a little bit after. But for now, I just want it as thick as possible on here. And see if we can add a teeny bit of yellow into it later after it's dry. Just because it looks a little too white to me. Using the white of the paper is always the best, but it didn't work. So you get the idea. This is not dark enough yet. It's not quite a dark enough silhouette. So now we're going to go in with black. Because when it's really dark out, you can't see very well, can you? You can't see detail. You can see the edge, which is in light. But a silhouette, you can only see a shape, really. You don't see any detail. So that's what we're doing here. When you're adding the dark paint, try to leave some of the lighter colors showing on the edges that are closest to the moon. It'll make the tree and the pumpkins glow in the moonlight. I'm keeping my brush at a 90-degree angle here, so that I'm working with basically the tip. Now the moon is there, so I'm going to put my darker spots underneath, under the leaves, not on top of them. Here, I put it up here on top because the moon is shining that way. And here it'll be the sides. And this is better done when the paper is dry. There we go. Whoops. See, I should be using a thinner brush for this because blades of grass, you know, they're not usually that thick. More black. Just want it to look like a bit of a pumpkin patch. You can see by leaving a bit of the orange that there are pumpkins here. You could put it all in black too if you want, but I do think in the moonlight you can see some of these details. You could see a little bit of the color. And that's quite a nice little Halloween setting too. And this can make cards. These are fun cards to give to your kids or your grandkids, or, you know, or even to yourself, just for yourself, just because it's fun to paint. And I'm just dabbing in a bit of yellow. And I think I'm going to take some of this orange that we used to make this nice wash. And I'm just going to, you know, just going to make this a little look a little less cut out. So I'm going to put a bit of clouds going across. I can't really come over here, it's still wet. If you don't like something, take your Kleenex and dab it up. I still have my board on an angle, just not because it has to be, it's because I don't want you to have too much of a glare. Okay. And it's the same with the clouds. The clouds are going to be darker at the top because the moonlight is casting light onto the bottom of them, and the top of the clouds will be a little darker. Just going to put a few over here. So now you've learned how to do a nice even wash, and you haven't drawn anything once again, and you've made a cute little Halloween, like I said, a card, an image. If these little guys, you can punch a hole and you can give it you can tie it to a Halloween gift bag. My mother-in-law used to give my kids Halloween gifts all the time. I mean, she'd make a special little bag up, and she'd always have little bows and curly ribbon on it, and she'd have a little card. And so this one too, I think I could work a little longer on the dark. I will do it. I hope you watch. So I'm going to fill this in. I'm just going to leave some jagged lines here. And for this moon, I'm not going to touch it. I like the color of it. I like how it turned out. Rinse and wipe my brush, and I'm just going to soften these lines right here. They're a little harsh. And now, guess what? It's the unveiling. It's time to take the tape off. So you pull the tape away from your paper. Unfortunately, I've tried reusing some tape and I've never been very successful. So you can try. I get mine at the Dollarama. It's not the money, it's mostly the waste. I don't like throwing things in the garbage when I don't have to, but it is difficult to reuse this. See, very gently. The cotton paper sometimes can be a little, not a thing. Perfect. Just be careful here, because your paint should be dry when you do this, but I just wanted to show you my favorite part of a painting. And voila! I want to show you the result of using a single color to paint the wash on the Dollarama paper. Since the black and purple separated, it was hard to tell if it was smooth, but this looks pretty smooth to me. I really hope that you enjoyed this and you learned something, and if you did, please give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. Please leave comments too. I would really love to hear from you. Happy watercoloring. Bye-bye.